Look, I'm just an otaku desperately, deeply looking for love, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be looking for me. So instead, we're gonna focus on the romance anime of 2025. Because 2025 had a pretty solid showing. Now granted, there really wasn't anything that completely blew me away, but I repeatedly found myself giddy kicking my feet at the slightest signs of romantic progress. So today we are ranking my top romance anime of 2025. 10 shows made the list, and I've got one honorable mention that technically isn't a romance by definition, but the relationship was undeniable, and I love it for that. But before we get started, quick disclaimer, these are my picks, my list, the lovebirds that I rock with. Yours might be different, and hey, if it is, fantastic, leave them in the comments. I would love to fight about it affectionately. But all right, let's get it. Starting with our honorable mention, we have The Summer That Hikaru Died, and I know what you're thinking, whoa, that is a horror anime, and you're right. Kind of, but also hear me out. For those that don't know, The Summer Hikaru Died is set in rural Japan and follows Yoshiki, a teenager who realizes his best friend Hikaru, the one person that he values most in this world, died on a mountain and something else came back in his place. Now on paper, that is a horror premise. It is scary, the atmosphere is genuinely unsettling, the supernatural elements are creepy, the animation is gorgeous, bleak, and the studio, imagine Studio Ghibli meets a very slow burn dread aesthetic that will live in your head rent-free. But here's why it belongs on a romance list. The core of this story is about love, specifically the horrifying question, if the person you love died and something that looks exactly like them, laughs like them, remembers your inside jokes, but isn't them, could you live with that? Could you love that? And frankly, Yoshiki's answer is basically yes, and that terrifies him. It's grief as a romance. It's the most emotionally complicated entry on this list, and it earned an honorable mention spot by making me feel things that I genuinely wasn't ready for. The ending had me literally clutching my pearls. So hey, you've been warned. At number 10, we've got Chitose is in the Ramune bottle. And if you slept on this one, hey, I get it. The marketing did not scream emotionally complex to me either. Big popular guy, school social hierarchy, and lots of gyaru aesthetics. But what this show actually does is use its charismatically Chitose, who's basically the king of the school, to quietly interrogate what it means to be truly seen by people. Like underneath all the confidence and popularity is a character who genuinely cares about pulling others out of their shells, and there's a genuine sweetness, if you will, to that frankly sneaks up on you. Now, it's not reinventing the wheel, but it's charming, it's warm, and if you want something light and fun to watch in between your heavier romance picks, then this is the perfect comfort food. Moving on to our number 9 spot, we have the 100 Girlfriends Who Really Love You Season 2. And look, I will not apologize for the show being on the list. Season 2 of 100 Girlfriends is exactly what you think it is. Chaotic, absurd, and full of the most unhinged harem comedy gags you will ever see. Rentaro has been blessed, or cursed, depends who you ask, by the gods to have 100 soulmates, and if he rejects any of them, they die. Yeah, classic Tuesday. This show has zero chill, and I mean that as the highest form of compliment. It knows exactly what it is, and it commits to the bit harder than pretty much most other anime I've seen within this genre. The humor is creative, the characters are surprisingly distinct for a harem of its size, and that's pretty impressive. At the end of the day, if you are burnt out by the slow burn, will they, won't they tension of most romance anime, then 100 Girlfriends is the perfect palate cleanser that will make you laugh so hard that frankly, you'll forget that you were emotionally exhausted to begin with. At our number 8 spot, we have The Two Perfect Saint, Tossed Aside by My Fiance and Sold to Another Kingdom. The Two Perfect Saint follows a heroine who gets brutally dumped by her fiance because she's too perfect and he feels inferior, which, let me just go ahead and tell you, he is exactly as inferior as he feels. Then our girl literally gets sold to another kingdom, but what this show does well is the whole revenge redemption arc energy. There's this new love interest who genuinely appreciates her for who she is, and she gets to rebuild her life on her own terms. And there's this incredibly satisfying side plot where the kingdom she came from is actively crumbling because of her absence. Now, it's not the deepest show on the list, but it scratches a very specific itch for a very specific mood. And essentially it's, I want to see a woman thrive after a man did her dirty. Moving on to the number 7 spot, we have Rascal Does Not Dream of Santa Claus, and this is a long-awaited return of Sakata and Mai, which alone sent the romance anime fandom into a frenzy. We're now at Sakata's university years, and the show weaves through multiple what I would consider to be puberty syndrome arcs, while still bringing things back to the foundation of one of the most mature and well-written anime couples of the past decade. What I love about this franchise is the fact that Sakata and Mai are already together, and they're in a committed relationship, and they communicate like adults. And I know romance anime communicating a wild concept, but the drama comes from the supernatural, not from the artificial misunderstandings, which honestly is just so deeply refreshing. And they did announce that this show is heading towards a final movie, so if you've been sleeping on the series, now is a genuinely good time to catch up because Sakata and Mai's story is coming to an end. All right, and at number 6, we have Pass the Monster Meet Milady. And yes, that is exactly what the title sounds like. And no, I will not be taking any questions. This is a fantasy rom-com about Lady Malferia, a noblewoman who has been socially blacklisted and dubbed the voracious villainess because she has an obsession with hunting and eating monsters. And frankly, I don't see what the problem is. She's just a woman that enjoys eating and enjoys meat. But it's all good because who walks into her life? No one but the Blood Mad Duke. This dude is feared, brutal, and he's known for being incredibly good at killing monsters. What the show gets so right is a comedy of compatibility. These two people are so weird, but in the same exact direction, and the romance grows out of that shared weirdness in a way that feels genuine and sweet rather than forced. It's not a slow burn, it's not angsty, it's just warm and funny and cozy in a way that most fantasy settings don't always manage to get right. Okay, picking the energy up just a little bit with my number 5 spot, Let's Play. And this one hit close to home for us in the content creation / gaming spaces. The story follows Sam, an indie game developer whose game goes viral for all the wrong reasons. It gets played and dunked on by essentially a YouTuber, and then said YouTuber moves in next door. It's awkward, it's chaotic, and it's pretty funny. But what Let's Play really gets right is the creative passion at its core. Sam's relationship with her game, with her craft, with her self-worth as a creator, that's where the emotional depth comes from. That said, the romance does layer on top of the story very well. In fact, it looks like it gives us a love triangle of sorts. However, it turns out to be a lot more deeper and more complex than that. This is just as much a story about loving your passions as it is for loving another person. At my number 4 spot, we have season 2 of Call of the Night, and frankly, it was everything I wanted and more. If you don't know the show by now, Ko is an insomniac middle schooler who starts wandering the city at night. Eventually, he meets a vampire named Nazuna, and the entire setup is that he needs to genuinely fall in love with her in order to turn into a vampire. Which is a power dynamic that sounds weird on paper, I'm not gonna lie. That said, it is handled with a lot more nuance and maturity than probably expected. Now, the night aesthetic in this anime is unmatched. The colors, the soundtrack, the jazz-infused lo-fi vibes, it generally makes you feel like you want to wake up at 2 a.m. and just walk under the city lights. If season 1 was all about vibes and season 2 all about story, then together they make a show definitely worth watching. All right, we're officially in the top 3, and at my number 3 spot, we have Kowloon Generic Romance. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, how is this possibly so high on the list? But hey, walk with me. So Kowloon Generic Romance is set in a sci-fi recreation of the Kowloon Walled City, one of the most densely populated places in history, now rebuilt as this more nostalgic urban enclave in the future that has largely already moved on. Our 2 leads are Reiko and Hajime, 2 co-workers at a real estate office who have obvious chemistry. And then it gets complicated. So Reiko has amnesia. She and Hajime were previously engaged, but she doesn't remember. He knows, however, he hasn't told her. And there's this growing mystery about what exactly happened to the real Reiko, and whether the person in front of us is who she says she is. This show is for people who like their romance seasoned. It's a slow burn, yet atmospheric, a little melancholic, but very sci-fi. Frankly, just from an animation standpoint, it's one of the most visually specific and interesting worlds of the year. Now, this is one of the slower shows on the list, but if you're patient with it, the payoff is deeply satisfying. This was the spring 2025 sleeper hit that honestly not enough people were talking about. All right, and at number 2, we have My Dress Up Darling season 2. And so this season flips the perspective, right? So we actually focus a lot more on Marin's anxieties and her insecurities. And once again, Studio Cloverworks is not playing games when it comes to animation. The fact that this show looks so good and it's a slice of life romance is wild. And it's not just the animation, but season 2 also plays with meta storytelling in a way that's genuinely creative, going into a full anime within an anime type of sequences style to match the fictional games and shows that Marin cosplays from. Honestly, it's ambitious and it works so well. Now, hey, nothing is perfect, so I would say I have one complaint with this season. So the romance itself doesn't really fully progress. Marin spends half the season working up towards a confession that by the end of the season doesn't really land, and for some, I know, very frustrating. As for me, I'm choosing one of those rare moments to trust the process. So the foundation that they're building off of is beyond solid, and I'm sure once that payoff hits, it's going to hit. But overall, still an incredible season, still one of the best romances of 2025, just not the number 1. And here we are, number 1, my number 1 best romance anime of 2025, The Fragrant Flower Blooms with Dignity. Yes, that title is a mouthful, but it's worth every single syllable. The setup is Romeo and Juliet adjacent. Rentaro goes to an all-boys school, while Karuko goes to an elite all-girls academy right next door. And the schools I have absolutely hate each other for forever. And I know, nothing we haven't seen before, but this is where most romance anime tend to stop being interesting, while this is where it starts becoming incredible. But here's the secret sauce of this show. The romance isn't built on misunderstandings and held back feelings. It's built on two people who genuinely want to be with each other and like each other, but they just have to figure out how to make that happen while everything around them seems to be working against them. And the other thing that sets the show apart is the fact that they actually talk, they actually think about each other, they have very real moments. For instance, when Karuko sends a text and she makes a typo, she's genuinely flustered, and that's something that we have all experienced. It's very real. And here's a stat that tells you everything you need to know. As of the recording of this video, this show sits as the highest rated anime of summer 2025 on my anime list. And let's not forget, this show aired along bangers like Gachi Yakuza and Dandadan. So all I'm saying is watch it, let it wreck you a little bit, because it's absolutely worth it. So that's it. That's my list. My top 10 favorite romance anime of 2025. And hey, I may be single for the foreseeable future, but at least I'll have these banger romance anime to fill the void. But the question is, did I miss any bangers, and would you change up the order of my list? Either way, leave it in the comments below. And while you're down there, if you enjoy the content, please leave me a comment and drop me a subscribe. And hey, I'll love you forever. All right, peace.